Last month, I wrote a post on LinkedIn asking the question, can a podcast become a fundraising machine? Hey, and welcome back to another episode of the Global Health Pursuit podcast. My name is Hethel Bauman, and this is the season 2 finale. Don't worry, new episodes are already in the works, and I'm aiming to release them starting in January. So make sure you're subscribed. I might even drop a few replay episodes in the meantime. This episode is a bit more laid back. There's no guest today, and I don't really have a formal script. This is just me sharing my thoughts. But for this episode, I wanted to revisit that LinkedIn post that I had mentioned, where I asked, can a podcast become a fundraising machine? I think it can. So when I began securing sponsorships for this podcast, I had made a promise to myself that 10 to 20% of each sponsorship would go directly to nonprofits that are working on the ground. These could be organizations that I directly highlight on the podcast, ones in the same space, or charities that my guests are really passionate about. And this past season, I was able to make that happen, at least in a small way. We raised just under $300 for a couple of charities featured in episodes 62 and 65, the Society for Women's Research and Health, and World Pediatrics. You know, when I first started this podcast, I envisioned building some sort of sustainable business model with a purpose. I didn't know if it would take the shape of a nonprofit or a social enterprise or just stay simply as a podcast. I really don't know still. But what I've learned is that the sponsors that I've worked with care deeply about making a difference. OrthoPediatrics and Evie supported episodes because they know that their dollars would fund programs in women's health and pediatric care. And if you're listening to this, you're probably still feeling the aftershocks of the recent election. I know that I am. It doesn't feel great. But the thing that this podcast reminds me of is the amazing community out there. A community that believes in sustainable development, believes in climate action, in poverty alleviation, and so much more. And I think that's why I keep amplifying these causes, because it reminds me that I'm not alone in this work. It gives me hope for the future. And sometimes I feel like I'm not equipped to make big changes, but it's all about the little steps, right? And you, my listeners, you truly keep me going. Your feedback, your messages about episodes that have shifted your perspective or have fired you up, they truly, truly mean the world to me. And so when I think about when I left my engineering career at the end of 2021 and how it was one of the hardest decisions that I've had to make, this podcast gives me motivation because I've poured so much into the growth of this podcast, learning, networking, and figuring how to grow it. What I've realized is that there's really no one path to building your legacy. And this podcast is part of my legacy. Even if it's not pulling in millions of downloads just yet, I am currently manifesting that. But it's a reflection of my heart. There are moments of vulnerability, and sometimes the stories that I get to hear from my guests move me to tears. And that's why I keep going. And that's why I can't wait for season 3. And so as I plan for season 3, I really want to hear from you. What topics are you passionate about? What do you want to hear more of? Who do you want to hear from? Shoot me an email or DM me on social media. I really want this to be a collaborative journey. Because that's what this is, right? It's a community. And then one more thing before I go. A quick reminder that Giving Tuesday is coming up on December 3rd. Last year, over $3.1 billion were raised in the US alone. So, how about we keep that momentum going? Mark your calendars, choose the charities that you want to support, and let's make a difference. If you're feeling extra generous, I truly appreciate a donation to help grow this podcast into the fundraising machine that I dream it to be. The link is in the description below. And if donating isn't possible for you, leave me a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. It helps just as much. You're the best, and I will see you very soon.